I want to introduce our guest speaker, and I'm going to apologize in advance. Anita Kalmane. She is a neurodivergent Scrum Master and dedicated advocate, and she's going to share her insights on breaking stigma, fostering inclusivity, and maximizing team potential. And I'm going to switch to a different deck there.
Shall I take over, Joe?
Please do.
Awesome. Thank you very much for the introduction, and greetings from the Netherlands once again. Happy Neurodiversity Celebration Week. It is not a coincidence that this is the week. When I emailed Jamie and said, hey, let's have a session about neurodiversity, I also said, this is Neurodiversity Celebration Week. Let's try to make it happen exactly this week. So if after the session you think, hey, this was a bit too short, I want to learn more, please go to neurodiversitycelebrationweek.com and you will find loads of sessions available all around the clock this week, pretty much free of charge, with loads of different topics from people who are much smarter than me. So really, really suggested to check it out. Loads of amazing content. And I wish I would be able to join all of them. My name is Anita. As Joe said, I am a Scrum Master as well, and I have been listening to quite a few of those Motto sessions, and I thought I want to be a speaker and talk about neurodiversity as well. And as Joe reminded me some weeks ago in one of the other meetups, the other Joe, not the host Joe, I need to give you a disclaimer, so I'm giving a disclaimer. So this is obviously only my insight on neurodiversity. I could be talking about this for hours and days, and all of us could, but we only have 1 hour, and I promise that there will be time for Q&A. So please take it as a teaser, as a short insight, as something to start with. I'm not expecting you to learn everything. I'm not gonna give you everything. I'm just gonna trigger your brain a bit so you get interested in the topic and you say, hey, as a Scrum Master, Agile coach, or whatever you are, I should learn a bit more about it, and I need some ideas to start with on how to help my teams. So that's the disclaimer, and we'll see more in the Q&A. Let's go to the next slide, please. So, a couple of house rules. I like looking at people during my sessions when I'm online, but I know not everybody is comfortable with it. So up to you if you're turning camera off or on or both. If you need to go somewhere, totally fine. Please use the chat to interact with me, to interact with each other. It's nice to see things happening. Try to keep it neurodiversity related or networking related, not about everything else. And we'll answer those questions at the end, and Katyana will be there to help me to not forget them. Thank you. Joe, enjoy your lunch. Let's go to the next one. So to start with, I want to ask you some questions because I'm somebody who really believes in I shouldn't do all the talking, and it's a bit hard to do it in an online setting, but I'll try. So I want you write in the chat. A, what do you think is neurodiversity? If you have a way how to explain it, and what neurodiversity conditions do you know? And I'll read out what I hear. So I'll give you a couple of minutes to write. No wrong answers, by the way. Everything is accepted. I can drink tea meanwhile. Neurodiversity is the deviation from the statistical model of normal, hence diversity. Okay, good start, Joe. Any diversion from what's considered neuronormative, a bit more specific. Let's go to the previous slide, please. The spectrum of first-hand experience in humanities. That's deep, Brett. Non-typical thought processes and some examples, ADHD or ADD and being on spectrum. Being on spectrum mostly usually is used to say autistic spectrum. So here we already have 2 neurodiversity conditions mentioned, ADHD and autism. I'm looking for some more conditions. What more do you know? Please don't Google, that's cheating. Dyslexia, that's very right, Falaka, and nice to see you. Falaka is a colleague of mine and only learned about this meetup like 2 hours ago, so I'm super happy she's able to be here.
Thank you.
Uh, any other conditions coming to your mind? Dyspraxia, loves that you mentioned Holly. I don't hear that a lot. DCD, OCD, obsessive compulsory disorder. Yes. I'll wait to see if there are a few more. Dysmorphia and dysphoria. Alexis, I'll be honest, I have never heard them, so I cannot answer to your question, Alexis. I would need to Google. But if you think of dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, they're all part of neurodiversity. So based on that word, I want to say yes, but I'm not sure, okay? So don't quote me on it. Um, Thank you very much for making it a bit interactive. And now let's go to the next slide, please. As you will see, there are around 15 to 20 neurodiversity conditions, and we will not be going in depth into what they all mean. I just want to show you how diverse there are. And a large amount of population has more than one neurodiversity condition as well. For example, having ADHD and autism is quite common. I always say neurodiversity is an umbrella, like you think of agile as being an umbrella, and under that umbrella you have all those different conditions, like you have Scrum, Kanban, pair programming, test-driven development, and so on. They all are under the agile umbrella, and you can use more than one of them. That's the same with neurodiversity. As a term. And what you said neurodiversity is, that's totally correct. If you ask me, it's just a different way of how our brains function. It doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's just different. And the word different is the key if you ask me. Based on the statistics, around 15 to 20% of the world population is neurodivergent. I'll just let it sink, 15 to 20, that's a very high percentage. And I think I have another question in the next slide. Yes, so I just said 15 to 20. So I want to see how we're doing in the public. So please raise your virtual hand if you have a family member, colleague, or a friend who is neurodivergent. If you're neurodivergent yourself, shortly, if you know any single human being who is neurodivergent, please put your virtual hand up. And I will try to see how many of them are up. Okay, I'm gonna give a few more seconds for people to figure out, unless they're eating lunch and not really able to press the keys. The chat is going very fast, so I will not be able to read all of that right now, which is amazing that you're interacting, but apologies if I don't react to some of the comments. I'll try to read them afterwards if the host sends them to me. So we have around half of the hands up, which is interesting. And why is it interesting? Because when I do those sessions face to face and I ask to put the hands up, it's around 90% of people. And I'm still wondering if that's because online people just are not able to always press the buttons, or because the audience online is really different. I think that's because it's about how to press the buttons and people are more listening than interacting. I don't believe the audience is really different. But basically, it means if you have a Scrum team, which consists of 7 developers, a product owner, and a Scrum Master, and that's 9 people, most likely 2 of them are neurodivergent. Or if you are me, the number is a bit higher in my team. So there are loads of people you are interacting on daily basis who would be neurodivergent. If you are saying, I actually don't know anybody, I'm pretty sure they exist, they just haven't told it to you, or they might not be aware themselves. You can lower your hands. Thank you very much. Let's go to the next slide, please. So, why am I talking about this topic? Well, originally, I learned about neurodiversity quite a few years ago when one of my best friends told me that he has ADHD. And that was the first time I knew somebody personally who has any neurodiversity condition. And that caught me by surprise because I had this stereotypical um, image in my head about kids with ADHD who are not able to learn, who are not able to sit still, who scream, run around. You name stereotypes, that's what I had in my mind. And my friend is anything like that. He's very calm, very silent. He wouldn't follow my stereotypes. And yeah, sure, he had problems studying and he couldn't finish studies number one and studies number two, but there was nothing else which would make me think he could have ADHD. So I started asking a lot of questions and realizing how wrong are my stereotypes. Years later, one of my best friends and colleagues told me that she's autistic, and we had pretty much the same story. Well, now within 1 minute, I could tell you she's autistic, but I didn't have that knowledge. Moving a few years later, I figured out I'm neurodivergent myself. I figured out my family is neurodivergent, and I'm not here to diagnose people. We got really official diagnosis, but it just shows you how late in your life you can get insights even in yourself. And currently in the department and the teams I work with, we have people with ADHD, autism, obsessive compulsory disorder, clinical depression, dyslexia, and I think I have mentioned all conditions I'm aware of, and our department is less than 30 people. So I'm talking about that's quite a number of things we're dealing with. I am also very privileged to work in an environment where we can be very open about it. I know that's not where majority of people might be working. Um, so I decided that it's time to start talking about neurodiversity out of neurodiversity bubble because I have loads of friends by now who are neurodivergents. And I feel that we need to get out of this bubble where we talk with each other and we need to talk with people who don't think about neurodiversity so often. And because I believe that tech teams have a lot of neurodivergence, we just ignore it, so to say. I thought I'll start talking with Scrum Masters and Agile coaches because that's a field I know the best, that's a field I'm comfortable in, and I know we are in the right place to help our colleagues. Um, and seems like that's the right approach because so many people are interested to hear. And the more I talk, the more I learn that people are neurodivergent themselves. They just haven't told it to their colleagues. I'm not going to ask you to disclose who is neurodivergent and not, but just think of it the more vulnerable you are in telling people who you are, the more vulnerable you will get your colleagues and people will open up. And when people open up, psychological safety can be increasing, not always in good teams. So that's why I'm doing those talks and workshops online and in different conferences and in companies. Let's go further, please. So because this is a talk, I thought I'll give you some information myself. And what most of people ask, that's the first time I hear about neurodiversity, I want to do something about it. What can I do as a Scrum Master? So I have 3 tips I think are the easiest to start with. It doesn't mean that they're the best or the golden rules. It's just something I have come up with I think helps. You figure out what works for you. First one are team agreements, and that is figuring out what works for your team. The typical example is of having daily stand-up at 9 o'clock we all know of. First, why 9 o'clock? But okay, I'll let that slide. But second, how often do you have people coming up late? Probably every single stand-up. Um, if not, you're a very lucky team. My experience shows there's always somebody being late. Automatically, you would say, hey, you just need to come on time. And if you don't come on time, you bring cookies. That has really happened. What I think is more important is figuring out, hey, what do we do as a team if somebody is late? Is that actually important? Or can the daily go ahead? Should we wait and only start it when somebody comes in? Should we move daily time? Because let's be honest, not everybody is a morning person. And why is that important for neurodiversity? Because with certain conditions, it's really hard being on time. I'm a time freak, so if we were discussing that before, before the call. If it's up to me, we will start 2 minutes to 9 because otherwise I'm stressing out. But I know I'm minority and most of people are not like me. So I accept that for some people it's really hard being there at, let's say, 9 o'clock. And for a lot of people with ADHDs, they have something called time blindness. They really want to be on time. It's just they're not always capable of. And it's like you're not capable of writing with your other hand, no matter how hard you try. So it's figuring out how do we go about it as a team, what solutions do we have, and being able to cater everybody, not only neurodivergence, catering everybody. You can have agreements about what happens when somebody is late. You can also have agreements, hey, where do we sit in the office if you are co-located? Because some people have preferences for certain places. For example, in my team, everybody wants to sit with a wall behind them, and we don't have all the walls. There are people who need to sit somewhere kind of in the middle of the room. And then it's about the trade-offs. How do you do it if you cannot have the wall behind you? For one person, we had a glass wall behind, and he didn't want to have a glass behind him, but we figured a solution. If you just tape paper on the glass, that's fine because it was about having a feeling that somebody's watching you, not specifically the glass wall. So through having such conversations, you can figure out what works for your team and cater there as a Scrum Master. Um, and I could go on about team agreements, but I think you get it. You talk as a team and you come up with what works for you as a team. That's tip number one. Tip number team is personal manual. I think it started by Google, but if you will Google, pun intended, you will get loads of companies using it. And it's a bit like you would have a manual for your washing machine or for your dishwasher or something else. It goes on how to use that machine. And it could be how to use you as a human being. Aka, what are your preferences? Are you a morning person or an evening person? Do you prefer that people call you directly, or would you like first to get a Slack message? Do you want to get agenda for the meeting, or you're fine if somebody pulls you in a meeting without any agenda? Think of those kind of different questions which are relevant for you, have everybody answer to them, and everybody creates that kind of personal manual. Again, there are loads of templates available online. People have asked me to share templates, but I think it really depends on the environment you work in. Are you a remote team? Are you co-located? Are you a mix? Are you a fun team, or do you like serious things? So you need to create a manual which talks in the voice of your team. And if everybody feels it and shares it with everybody, you can better understand each other and better cater. And you will notice if it helps neurodivergence, it will actually help everybody because everybody wants to be catered and approached in the right way. That's tip number two. Tip number three is something called employee resource groups. And I know in bigger companies, that's a very standard thing. But if you work for a smaller company, you might not be aware of what it is. It's basically employee-led initiatives. And I used to work for a European company called Just Eat Takeaway, and we had a few employee resource groups. One was about neurodiversity, but we also had one for expats, one for parents and carers, one for women in tech. You name it, we probably had an employee resource group, which would be people from different departments and positions getting together on the topics they're passionate about, figuring out what does the company need to cater to those people and driving those changes. In a big, good company, you would also get the necessary support from C-level and you would get some budget to run those initiatives. So for that specific case, we got budget per year per resource group where we would be able to invite external speakers to different sessions. For experts, we would organize tours so they get to know the cities they're living in, figure out something what would work for their partners because often they would move with their partners to a new place. Um, but you don't need always money to do something. You can also just create Microsoft Teams group, Slack group, and just start with, hey, how is it going? What are you struggling with as a neurodivergent? And figure out what can you start pushing as a group, because if you push together, changes are more likely to happen. What kind of things you can push depends what you need. I know companies who have managed to get people who need headphones, noise canceling headphones, because they help a lot of neurodivergence. In that particular case, in the beginnings, I said it's only for people who have a doctor's note that they really have a condition. That didn't land very well, and luckily, people pushing were very strong and said that's not very inclusive. Not everybody wants to open up with their conditions, and not everybody has an official condition in the first place, because in a lot of countries you have huge waiting lines. And we just want to trust that people really need it, because why would you order a headphone if you don't need it? So through talking with facilities in HR, they managed to say everybody who wants a headphone and is, I think, supported by manager or so will get a headphone, and that really helps them in the workplace. You could also think of silent rooms if that's needed, if you are co-located, and different kind of things, what those people themselves were really leading and pushing. If you have such a resource group, I would suggest you to join. If you work for a very big company, there's a chance it exists and you're not aware of it. I have come across that quite a lot of times. I cannot tell you how to find them, but I hope you have somewhere a search function where you can ask somebody else in the company and figure it out. If you work for a smaller company, maybe you can start one yourself, just with 2 or 3 people. Get once a month together, talk about it, spread the word, and maybe next month you have another person. It doesn't need to get complicated, but together you have more power, especially when you come from different departments. You will also notice, hey, those tips are not all about neurodiversity. No, they're not, because I believe if we help minorities, and neurodivergents are currently minority, we will help everybody. If you install a lift in a building, you don't help only people who are in a wheelchair. You help pregnants, you help people with heavy suitcases, you help people with mobility issues, you help the lazy person who has had a really bad night. You help pretty much everybody. If you make a website with a bit bigger font, you don't only help people who have vision problems or who need screen readers. You help people who might have dyslexia. You help people who have only few seconds to read instead of several times. Again, you help pretty much everybody. And another Scrum Master, Paul, said neurodiversity and inclusion helps everybody except bullies. I'll leave you with that, because bullies always find something to complain about. I trust we are not here to help them. We could be talking more about the tips, and I think I have the next slide on that. I do. So I want to hear your tips from something. Maybe there's something you have tried regarding neurodiversity and you think it really helps and you want to share to other Scrum Masters. Or maybe it inspires you and you say, hey, I have this idea and I want to start it. So put some tips in the chat and we'll see what comes out. I'll just skip all the chat. Regular awareness programs. Lovely, Falaka. Anything else you might have heard of? Designing and facilitating to use multiple modalities to gather insights and feedback. Innovation games and training from the back of the room. That's nice. I also heard icebreakers work really bad for quite a lot of neurodivergence. I love icebreakers. I might be minority, but I don't like stupid icebreakers. I think they really need to be meaningful and not just say something which has nothing to do with the activity you will do afterwards. But if they're like related, I really love them. We have some employees that need to take 5 minutes before a meeting to walk so they can sit in the meeting. So easy to implement. Thank you, Crystal. supporting sessions that allow other ways to communicate, typing on messaging, team members' user manuals, as that's exactly the personal manual I was referring to, specifically how to receive feedback. That's great. Receiving feedback, funnily enough, is also very cultural. I learned some time ago that there are cultures where giving positive feedback in public is not appropriate. Coming from Western world, I would think you give constructive feedback in person, you give praise in public. That doesn't work for all cultures. There are some cultures where it's actually very offensive because it makes other people feel that they have not really done anything worth mentioning. So if you work with people with very different cultures, something to think and talk with them about. And I know for a few people it can also feel very awkward. If they're not used to receiving praise, they wouldn't really know how to react. What else have we have? Get the management aware of neurodiversity people needs and get rid of their prejudice. That's very nice, Rita. Jeremy used mental models to help understand how people think about things differently. Quite a few of nice ideas. Thank you all for sharing. I think we could talk about tips for a very long time. And I don't want you to try all of them at once, but if there is something you want to start with, hopefully this will inspire you and say, hey, this actually is relevant to me and my teams, and I could try it. What else have we got on my slides? Okay, so as I said, I will leave plenty of time for questions, not because I don't have information to share, but because I mentioned the more often I do those sessions, the more questions I get. And I think that's actually often why you come here, because you have some specific things you want to know and want to share. So I want to leave time for questions, and I'll try to answer as honest as I can before I'm closing it. I do ask, please put questions in the chat if possible. If you have issues with typing, please raise your virtual hand and then we'll unmute you, but having it in the chat is easier for overview. Falake, is PTSD neurodiversity? I don't know for sure because I'm not a theoretical expert, but my gut feeling says no, because neurodiversity is a it consists of conditions you're born with. Like when you were a baby, you already had autism or ADHD or something else. You might just not be aware of it. PTSD is something you get during your life, and a lot of symptoms might be overlapping. But because it's something you acquire, I wouldn't say it falls under neurodiversity. And there are actually not always clear agreements on what's neurodiversity. There are people who say high sensitivity is part of neurodiversity, and there are people who say it's not. There are people who say being an introvert is part of neurodiversity, and there are people who say it's not. Does it really matter? I don't know. I think we should treat everybody with respect, and we should try to figure out everybody's needs, no matter when they acquire different kinds of thinking. That's the most important thing. Um, what questions? Well, if you
Sorry, if I can quickly ask, because I was really confused when I saw it in the PT, in the umbrella, the slide where you showed the umbrella of different type of neurodiversity. And I saw PTSD, I was like, I've never heard of this. So I really want to know more if there is connection between PTSD, why you put it in that slide that shows the umbrella of different type of neurodiversity, maybe slide 2 or 3. Thank you.
I know which slide, Falaka. I stole it from online when I was looking for a nice slide. I didn't create it. Good for you to notice it. And Joe added a nice comment. It's not developmental, but acquired neurodiversity. I don't know enough about acquired conditions to have strong opinions about it. For me, neurodiversity is something you're really, as I said, something you're born with. It just, you might not always realize. But maybe I should update my slide for the next presentation. Thank you very much. Other questions? Jeremy, do you want to share something about the mental models?
Oh, I mean, it's just things that I've experienced and tested with as a Scrum Master in the past in, presenting a certain um, a problem or opportunity at hand and inviting through mental models and kind of drawing out thoughts and connecting thoughts amongst others, how they think about things in different ways to help shape that model and what it looks like from a whole. So just as a general, right, kind of to kind of explain what I've done. So nothing like super formal in that sense, but just inviting that visual so that we can see how people are approaching the situation differently.
Thank you for sharing. That reminds me, and I'm not sure of the English word, but here in Netherlands we have one activity for people, specifically for autism, which lets you kind of experience how people with autism think. I'm not gonna try to translate it to English. Um, well, actually, I will. It's something like Autism Experience Circle, very bad translation. And you get 7 exercises to kind of let you into the brains of people with autism, but they have nothing to do with autism itself. And I forgot most of the exercises because, I'm sorry, it was a few years ago. But one of them was you have a mirror in front of you and you have something there and you need to write it down with your other hand. So if you're right-handed, with your left hand, and it's not that people with autism have issues with mirrors or writing, but it's just letting you see that how you see the world, there is this totally different kind of mirror in between that it shows different. And all the exercises were quite complex and didn't make a lot of sense without explanations. It was basically to show you how different, how difficult it could be if you are autistic to experience the world. Um, I don't know enough neurotypicals who have followed the exercises, so I don't know how much it helps them. I was just more curious what it is when I followed it. So I cannot really talk about the relevance, but I think such kind of things, trying to understand how people with different conditions think and how do their brains really function is interesting. Like when I learned about the time blindness, I was like, oh, that explains a lot. I just said they don't care about being on time. They really, really do. It's just super hard. So the more you read about specific conditions and the more people you meet, the more you understand and can improve your understanding about how you can help others. Although everybody's unique and everybody has different symptoms, but there are some underlying things, of course. Do you have other questions? Or is everybody busy eating lunch in the US? I know it's your lunchtime. It's our dinner time here in Europe. Well, this part of Europe, not south of Europe. Please don't tell me you don't have questions. Will you be the first audience where everything is so super clear? Thank you, Rita. What can you do for people with sensory issues in a work environment that is not open-minded and accepting? Do you want a short answer or a long answer? The short answer is change your job and go somewhere which is open-minded and accepting. But that's not the answer you're willing to hear because you already know that. The long one. I always, people say I'm a bit naive, but I always try to see the best in people. So I would try to figure out why is that environment not open-minded and accepting? What are the reasons behind, and how can we make the environment more open-minded and accepting? Because I think once we solve that, solving, helping people with sensory issues will be easier. So you actually need to try to solve the root cause. And I don't know enough about your environment to comment on. If that's not a thing to do because maybe it's too big, it's too corporate, everything needs to go through pro recruitment and whatever else, try to think of small things and improvements. Maybe headphones are not allowed, but can you have the invisible air things, iPhone things people use, if that helps people? Maybe you cannot do anything with lights because they're centrally organized, but you could you could probably put nothing on the ceilings. But think of something like low level, what is within the control of people, what you could be doing, which does not require approvals. But that will only be temporary solution because there will be soon something else popping up in the environment if it's not open-minded, and the new problems will appear again. So it's like when you are super sick with high fever and temperature and you just keep taking paracetamol. It will help today, but actually you might need to see the doctor. Anita, do you want to add anything? I'll take it as a no. And Joe, I liked your comment on distraction-filled environments that most big corporations expect people to work in, and open floor plans. Try pushing for more working from home. Although I know it's super hard. Give more data, more reasons, and it's always about pushing as a group. If it's one person going to management and saying it doesn't work for me, it's one person. If it's a whole department, you don't want the whole department to quit tomorrow. So then you need to take things more serious. So it's probably not only neurodivergents who have the issues. If you ask other people, they also will want those accommodations as well. So the group pressure is really there to work on, and shows them how will it benefit your work. I think management often doesn't understand what's the benefit for them, and depending on what kind of people they are, you need to bring different information. Do they need data? Do they get inspired by different success stories by other companies? Do they get inspired if you start crying? I don't know. I hope not. But like, do you need to play on their emotions? If you figure out how you need to place them, so to say, then use those triggers to get what you want. Katiana asked, can you tell us a story about a team working to become more inclusive? Um, I mentioned being late and not coming, and I had a colleague who was always late for the dailies. And in the beginning, it was haha, it's cookies, and then it's we're gonna mark you late on Slack, and if you are 3 times late, then you need to do something. At some point, I think he kind of started liking bringing cookies because there were way too many times and he was late and immediately coming with cookies. So that wasn't really a motivator. But then it was really about explaining why is it important for everybody to be in the daily? What's the benefits? And sometimes we would be waiting a few minutes. Awkward, but you get a coffee, you do some chit chat and whatever else. Sometimes it is, hey, if you are late, please add afterwards an update in Slack, but that doesn't really motivate people either. It was more having a conversation saying, hey, does this time work for you? Or do you have anything else? Well, they just had problems getting out of bed. If I'm not wrong, we moved the daily to quarter later. And you could say that that really doesn't always solve problem because people start showing up quarter later. So it's about combining all those different things and really making that person feel important that, hey, we really need you there. Your input is valuable. And when you're not there, we'll address it. Not in a way, hey, you're late again, but hey, how is it going in your life? Did you have a good sleep last night? Is there something we can do as a team? And then they want to start being on time themselves, even if it's not always possible. And with that person, they just, they really try, but they cannot be on time. So by now we have accepted they're like a couple of minutes late. We'll hang around. When they're a couple of minutes late, we know we'll start 2 minutes later, and people don't even complain it because they know that this person is trying their best. And just this acceptance and knowing and accepting you, it also lets you start daily in a positive note instead of saying, hey, you again late. No. It's just like, okay, let's talk about what we're going to do today. and that totally changes the mood you have in the meeting. That's a very short example, but I hope it answered your question, Katiana. And what else do we have? Are there any resources, books, or organizations you would recommend for companies or individuals looking to learn more? I will share them afterwards. Do we really have Jamie on, or is Joe again using his second alias?
No, I think that's really Jamie.
Okay. Hello, Jamie. So there's one book about neurodiversity written by a neurodiversity expert here in Netherlands that's translated also in English. It's called When All Brains Thrive. I'll share a link afterwards, and that goes about neurodiversity at workplace in general. I personally found it as a good introduction, but it can very fast get a bit too general. So I always say figure out what conditions you have in your teams or you're interested in and start learning about those specifically, because I think that helps the most, but that's me. And maybe I have just read and been to too many meetups that I need the specific ones. So I'll send one on autism. My favorite one is a book called Neurotribes. And why I like it, because it talks a lot about the history of autism from the before the Second World War, and the two researchers in Austria who started all the research. And it explains a lot about why we have all the stereotypes about autism we have, and why most of diagnosed people are currently men, and women have tendency to get diagnosed later. And that's because the research for most of years was focused on men, so we have less information about how autism in women is visible. And it just helped me a lot to understand why things are happening a certain way. The book is quite thick, but it reads very easily. And you can figure out by now I like books. For ADHD, there's a very funny, I think, British book called Dirty Library. Dirty Library. I think it's called Dirty Library. I'll need to check. And it's about couple where one of them has ADHD and the partner doesn't, and they talk about the same story but from two different perspectives: person with ADHD and person without, and different tips how you can help if you have ADHD yourself, but how you can also help people with ADHD. And I like it because it's funny, so it's super easy to read and you laugh. It's also very relatable if you know people with ADHD. And it's just on a positive note. It's not this very heavy thing. So those are ones I would suggest to start with. Um, I'll send them to Jamie so she can afterwards send them to all the resources. For organizations, I can only recommend things in Netherlands because that's the bubble I live in, and most of you are not based here, so I'm not going to do that. If people have other resources and suggestions, please put them in chat so we can learn from each other. Google is very dangerous in this because at least in terms of autism, there is loads of outdated bad information. So be very careful what resources you find, and check the source carefully, that it's something trustable and backed up by data instead of some pseudoscience and people who say you get autism by being vaccinated. That's not the information we wanna be reading. And I'll try to be politically correct. Okay, next question. I'm the questioning person who would be asking what the overall benefit of the daily was, depending on the relative maturity of the team and product. Alexis, I agree. You should always ask what's the benefit of something before you attend it. Joao, and I hope I pronounced it correctly. What I should share or not with the company. I think it depends what you want to get out of it. Should you share your diagnosis? That's a question I often get asked. That depends again, what do you want to get out of it? In most of cases, it will not work in your favor because people know so little about it that they will have wrong prejudices and stereotypes about you. It can work in your favor in the right environment. I'm not sure that's always the case. I think what's more important is you should share what you need to strive at the workplace, no matter if you have any condition or not. So what things do you need to be the best person of yourself at work? For example, do you need to work from home or not? I cannot concentrate at home very well because I end up doing dishes, cooking, washing, you name it, and I'll do all of that instead of doing my work. So I prefer going to the office, and I'm always very clear. I tried remote work, it sucked. But most of the people are not like me. They like working from home. So share why it helps you. How does it help you being productive? How does it help you to focus? And what kind of distractions you have in the office? If it helps you to have noise canceling headphones, share. Is it possible to wear them while you're working? Or do you have a policy that everybody should always not have them? So figure out what you need and share that with the company. You might feel you're being judged, but quite often it's a feeling you have instead of what people really think. And to be honest, most of the people are too busy with themselves. They don't have time to judge you because they're too busy thinking that somebody else is judging them. So it's often really in your head. And otherwise, you can always ask people. You after a time, if you're comfortable with your team, you can say, "Hey, I prefer to do this. How do you find it? Is it something acceptable or would that bother you? Like, I don't know, listening to loud music might be bothering people, but putting your feet on a table in a certain company might be acceptable." A random example. The more you start sharing such small things, the more other people will start sharing, and the vulnerability will go up, psychological safety will go up. But start with something small which does not risk your job. If you ask from working from home for 5 days a week in a corporate bank, I'm not sure that the next question you will ask you will be taken too serious. So figure out the waters, so to say. What else do we have? Thank you, Jamie, for finding when all months thrive. Are there any other questions, Katyana? Because the chat is getting too full.
Yes, Rita has one down near the bottom. Would you like me to read it out?
Sure.
Yeah. Let's see. As a neurodivergent, I need everything to be clarified in detail so I understand my task. But sometimes I realize that people are getting bored and losing focus due to my long explanation. How to find the middle where people can understand but still follow.
Okay. I'll put the dirty library book meanwhile here. If there is possible that you can share the explanation in advance in writing, I think that would be helpful because there are also people who can get lost because they hear a lot of information and reading is easier for them to understand and they have time to digest it. So if you send it in advance, those who want to read will read, those who don't want to read will not read. People can prepare. And when you are not sure if you can do a summary, you can always ask a colleague whom you trust, "Hey, this is the issue I'm struggling with. I want to ask it, but I'm not sure how to make it shorter. Can you help me to summarize it?" Don't do it in every meeting, but when it's really important, that might be a solution. You can also start with a disclaimer. I think disclaimers really help because if people understand why you're struggling with something, they're more likely to tolerate it. You can say, "I apologize. I have issues as summarizing things. I'm really trying my best. I might fail in it, but blah, blah, blah." And at least they take you more serious. I hope I partially answered your question. Anything else, Katyana?
Not that I see.
Okay, then let me put the Neurotraps book. All my links are coming up Dutch, so I'm trying to find the right links for non-Dutch audience. Okay, here it is, Neurotribes. And I hope that the hosts will be able to send the chat notes also to the participants because there's loads of valuable information here. I'm not a huge fan of loads of audiobooks, so I cannot recommend those. I don't think I'm allowed to say I'm not a fan of podcasts because I have been to quite a lot of podcasts and people don't want me to say that. But there are loads of great podcasts with my name and other people names where you can listen to more about neurodiversity if that's your thing and you don't like reading so much as I do. There are also quite a few fun comedians available on YouTube. I am aware of mostly those with autism. I'm sure you will find many more with others. Another tip I forgot to mention, in most of Western countries, you have official associations. So in Netherlands, we have Dutch Association of Autism, Dutch Association of Bipolar Disorder, and so on. Those websites are trustable. They have loads of events on locations and often also online. They have resources. So find them. I don't know about the US. I can imagine you have several such associations. And from what I remember from reading Neurotribes, not all of them are trustable. So check carefully the sources, but you might want to look there as well if you're interested in specific conditions and just attend some events and see if that's something what works for you. Mostly they're not workplace related. It's general. So if you're looking only for something which works at the workplace, feel always free to send me a LinkedIn message with specific questions and I will see what kind of resources I can send you. I will wrap up. Is there another slide, Katyana? Okay. Disclaimer, if you said, hey, I have some more questions or I like adding people on LinkedIn, you're very welcome to add me. Please do add a note, otherwise I will think it's spam and ignore you. Most of people have possibility to add a message on LinkedIn, but I heard that it's not always possible. So I'll try to remember the names I have seen here and accept. If I don't accept you, please don't get offended. That's probably because I didn't notice you are in this meetup. Try to figure out how to connect so we can get in touch. Please don't take it personal. I just don't like random people inviting me. That's it. We are not random. We have had 1 hour together. Um, as I mentioned, this is just a short disclaimer. I'm not here to give you all information about neurodiversity, to give all the tips. If you got at least one thing you can improve for your colleagues, I'm super, super happy. If you figured out, hey, I want to learn more about ABC, I'm super happy because my goal is met. And if you said, hey, actually, I should start opening up and doing something about sharing this information with my colleagues, I'm also super happy because that was my goal. I want to break stigma. I want to make it normal to talk about it because there are a lot of us and we're just growing. Amount of people with neurodiversity conditions is just growing. So we're not going to go away. We're just increase. And I wanted to say something, but I forgot. Well, apparently it wasn't too important. I think that's it. Thank you very much for your time. And if you have any feedback, feel free to drop me a message or give it to Jamie and I'll hear about it. And back to the
Outstanding.
hosts.
Well, thank you very much for that. We appreciate your time. That was good. The recording will be posted on the YouTube channel within the next 10 days or so. And just a public service announcement. If you enjoyed this session, we've got plenty of others. We have about 2 or 3 lunch and learn meetups per month. Check us out on meetup.com and sign up. And we want to see you at another session. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day or a great evening.
Join the sessions. They're awesome.